I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Thank you to this week's sponsor, a new sponsor, SBA Complete.
Is your financial institution considering SBA lending? Maybe you need to improve your current SBA line of business. We're SBA Complete, the most experienced SBA lender service provider in the country. Executing an SBA loan program can be complex and difficult to navigate without an experienced and knowledgeable team. But most financial institutions cannot find the right talent or afford to bring the expertise in-house. That's why lenders across the country choose SBA Complete.
At our office hours session last week, we had a change-up. Lance Sexton was AWOL, so we brought in a couple of replacements. First one, Chuck Evans. Fascinating conversation about where he was in Tennessee at the Tennessee Small Business Lenders Conference.
You're in a hotel room in Tennessee. What are you doing? What are you doing there?
Tennessee Small Business Lenders Conference, again run by Eventfully Yours. We had 230 participants this year, very first year, which is awesome. Bill Manger was speaking, and of course Diana Seaborn, Vanessa Pachon, who else? Linda Riley. One of the interesting things that came out of it that I just read was that the Community Advantage program that put a moratorium on new lenders, which is an interesting development. So,
Chuck, define Community Advantage, and why do you think they put on a moratorium?
Well, back when the banks weren't making those small loans, they were looking for different distribution systems. So they decided to allow certified development companies and CDFIs, Community Development Finance Institutions, offer a 7A loan product up to $250,000. I think there's, 129 lenders today. So I think they're slowing it down. They've extended the pilot program to 2022, I think, but it's to give them an opportunity to see how this shakes out, I think.
Well, the challenge for community...
I'm a firm believer in it, and I think that one of the shortcomings of the program was probably education. I know it was.
And I know that your background came out of servicing or providing services for those CDCs, Community Advantage lenders. The challenge is, how do you compare a Community Advantage lender working in that small loan underserved market, which is going to have higher losses, to a Live Oak Bank, which is a very conservative lender and has much higher dollar amounts?
You can't, but how can you compare a mission-based lender, SBA microloan, to a Community Advantage lender? You're going to have higher defaults. You need to make...
I guess, and that I have no issue with that, but I guess the question is, does SBA recognize that? How are they going to regulate that?
Well, I think given the fact that there's the lender oversight bill, there's a lot of focus on lender oversight today. They're just taking it and they're going to see where they are and where they're going to be in a couple of years with the program.
Well, you and I are a big fan of mission-based lending. It's got to be done. That's definition of SBA. We can do these other Main Street type loans where the person can get a little bit longer maturity and help them out. But helping these people off the ground is great. Hey, make sure you
remember, credit elsewhere. I mean, times are good right now. I mean, the market's up, job rates, everything's looking good. But when the recession comes again, it's going to turn around. They're going to want these smaller lenders.
The demographics of our audience, we run this, and every now and then, is how many were lending in 2008, and it's usually in the 25 to 33% level. We have a lot of gray hair and experience in this. We lived through that recession. And Lance and I always say, the next downturn is coming. We're not going to tell you when, but it's going to come, and be prepared.
Lance Sexton did a webinar on documenting equity injection, and he gave a nice presentation about a concern to all of us, equity injection fraud.
Equity injection fraud is a hot button item for the SBA's Inspector General. Proper verification of equity injection, proper documentation is crucial in your SBA loan file. And a very common source of repair on the SBA guarantee is not having the equity injection properly documented and verified. Additionally, and we'll talk about this later, it can be the source of denial on an SBA guarantee. We want to make sure you understand the proper sources of equity injection, how to document and verify that equity injection, and how to set equity injection requirements on your SBA loan, as well as talking about the SOP 50105J came out January 1st of this year, and it certainly helped to clarify the requirements on equity injection on an SBA loan. Equity injection fraud, again, has been a problem. I've been in SBA lending for more than 30 years, and I've seen my fair share of false documents related to equity injection. The SBA's Office of Inspector General has done a number of fraud investigations related to equity injection and determined that it's a significant and recurring problem in SBA lending. Some of the areas where there's problems, frequently equity injection comes as a gift. It could be a gift from a parent to a child. It could be a gift from some other relative to someone that's starting a small business. One of the most common things that I have seen is you'll have Joe's giving his brother Tom $50,000 to inject into the business supposedly, and provides a letter, a gift letter, indicating that they're going to do that, but the bank never verifies and the money never goes in. So false gift letters, when you have a gift as a source of equity injection, you want to make sure as a participant bank that you clearly get the proper documentation on that gift for your SBA loan. Also, false promissory notes and standby agreements. There are circumstances where debt that is on full standby can be counted as equity injection, and you have someone that provides a note. And guys, in today's day and age, you can create virtually anything you want on a computer, including a note and a standby agreement. And there have been many circumstances historically that the Inspector General has identified where a note document was part of the SBA file with a standby agreement as part of the equity injection, and they turned out to not be true. False financial statements. Of course, you need to document the source of the equity injection, and the individual provides a financial statement that shows large account cash balances that are going to be used as equity injection. And certainly we need to verify those cash balances, but SBA lenders sometimes cut corners to get to the closing table, and they don't properly vet out the financial statement. Also, false bank statements or cashier's check. You know, have you ever had an SBA loan where, you know, somebody said, we're going to put $25,000 in, and you say, we need to have a source, and they shoot you a copy of a cashier's check. I got one just the other day that I had to verify the source of that cashier's check and that it was actually injected into the business. But false bank statements and cashier's checks are also an example of false equity injection documents.
During the office hours, we discussed a fascinating question with Chuck Evans and I on what do lenders do with a startup or an acquisition and you have a working capital need. In this particular instance, we have a new equity injection of $100,000, but what does the lender do when there is additional working capital required above and beyond the equity injection? The 1920 that we certify requires that the lender put in sufficient working capital for the next 12 months. Listen to the conversation Chuck Evans and I had.
Hey, this is a great question from Teddy, and lenders wrestle with this. SBA wants equity injection for a startup, for acquisitions, but what do we do with the working capital component? How do we structure it where we say $100,000 is equity injection, but then the lender throws back $50,000 as working capital? How does SBA view that? Chuck, I'll throw it to you first.
Well, common sense would say if you need $100,000 in working capital, forget the equity injection. Then the equity injection is 50. You need to do your homework to demonstrate the fact that that operating company needs $100,000 in working capital. And if you do that and you explain it, at least in my opinion, it'll work.
My takeaway are two things. I would not go more working capital than the original equity injection. I would flip those numbers. You have 100,000 equity injection, fine. 50,000 working capital. I don't believe the SBA would criticize you for that. But you got to get the money up front. You have to identify it and make sure it's in that bank account before you fund that loan.
Another guest that we had at office hours was Mike Brotman, President BoeFly, and we again talking about how much do we need to put into a startup or a business acquisition for equity injection.
And we had an interesting discussion on equity injections, on how much is needed. And again, we talk about the downturn, and Mike, I'd sort of like your input on this. Is Lance was saying in his webinar yesterday, hey, you may want to get 25% equity injection on perhaps a startup restaurant or some of these startups, and you don't want to go to the floor of 10%. And he's saying, yeah, but 25% perhaps can be a conventional loan. Mike, what do you see in your dashboard?
Yeah, so if I encourage this lender, it looks like it's Mark, I encourage Mark to come on to BoeFly. We have plenty of startup loans. If he wants to go ahead and offer conventional on those loans, he's welcome to. What we see is that a pure startup loan, whether it be franchise or an independent business, people aren't doing that as a conventional financing. Right. In which case, we're going to go SBA. And I think at that point, it becomes a negotiation. We've seen startup loans certainly have less than 25%. A compelling transaction might have as little as 15%. In some cases, as low as 10%.
Yeah, if you have strong management and perhaps it's a buyout from the employees, or they've had numerous subways in the past, then yeah, they know what they're doing. But I know Mark is upset because he lost a specific transaction to another lender who actually the borrower sent him a nasty note saying, well, I guess I need to go down the street because they're much more receptive. You know what? It may be okay to walk from time to time.
Yeah, we're on a roll on equity injection. And the reason why, it's the #1 reason for SBA 7(a) guarantee denials. That's why we spent a lot of time on this. We want to reinforce the basics. Here's an overview on how to verify equity injection.
Have you ever had an early defaulted SBA loan where you had to submit proof and verification of the equity injection to the Herndon Center?
Hey guys, this is one of the most critical areas where the potential to get a denial of the guarantee occurs on early default loans. Early default is defined as an SBA loan that defaults within 18 months of the final disbursement, or in the case of a line of credit, it's within 18 months of the initial disbursement. If you have an early default loan, your proof and verification of equity injection becomes critical.
Lance, we've talked about this before, and it varies from time to time, but would you say the #1 source of a guarantee denial is lack of equity injection verification?
It is absolutely, Bob. If it's not #1, it's #1A. It's one of the most significant sources of denial. And we'll talk a little bit later when we talk about repercussions of not properly documenting and verifying equity injection. We'll talk about what the potential reason.
I would say takeaway is when you close these loans, the #1 thing to review after it's closed and serviced or dispersed, go back and verify your equity injection.
Continuing with our series of America West videos, good friend Tim Terry and Associates. I think you'll enjoy this exchange from two old-timers. I started the Coleman Report in 1993, which is now, what, 25 years? You beat me by a year. Tim Terry, good friend, 1992. What have you been doing in the SBA industry since 92?
Our job is to help SBA lenders grow and do it right.
Be specific.
Okay, so we set up SBA departments. We do organizational studies, efficiency studies, write credit policy, loan procedures, and marketing plans so you can grow your loan volume. And then I have another division where we recruit talent to make sure they execute in a way that helps them grow.
You sound like you've said that before.
Just a few times.
You got the elevator speech down. What is your footprint?
Nationwide. We're based out of Dallas.
What is the biggest change you've seen in our industry since 1992?
The biggest change is the fact that the program's doubled in size in a very few short years, and we have not doubled the size of our staff. So we've had to get more efficient, streamlining things, It's all good, but we're still grossly understaffed, and we've got to do more to address that issue of bringing new talent into the industry.
Yeah, because there's a lot of gray-haired people.
Just a few. Just a few.
Tim, my friend, as always, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah.
Continued success.
Appreciate it.
Hey, always looking for success stories from your borrowers. Send them to us. We'll play them in the Coleman Report Update. Thank you for joining us for the update and supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.